The latest missile strike on Syria from President Trump has caused a lot of debate to be raging on the right, and there's no exception in the furry subculture either. In our chat rooms and our platforms and on Twitter, a lot of us have been going back and forth about whether this was right or not, and there's really two sides that have come about. This is about a week old news, but I've been wanting to make this video for a while, explaining why I support Bashar al Assad, and I think you should too. I get that a lot of MAGA people on the right want to support Trump, and they like seeing America flex its muscle on the world stage and whatnot, but this is the wrong thing to do, and this is the wrong way to do it. So I'd like to explain why these missile attacks were wrong, and more importantly, why I support Bashar al Assad. To really understand this, you have to look past the emotional talking points that the media is presenting, and as a Trump supporter, you should be able to do that. And unfortunately, a lot of us haven't, it seems. The Syrian civil war began about 7 years ago, when there were massive protests against the Assad regime, including defections from the army. There were defections from the Syrian Arab Army. They broke off and they became the Free Syrian Army, and the Syrian civil war began in earnest after that. The Free Syrian Army, however, wasn't capable or ready to fight a long, protracted war that was required in this case. And so by 2013, the Free Syrian Army had pretty much disbanded. The Free Syrian Army as we know it had pretty much disbanded. The Free Syrian Army is still around, by the way, and as you know, the Syrian civil war has continued to rage on. And the reason for that is because foreign powers have since stepped in, particularly Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and indirectly the United States. They stepped in, and they've stepped in with proxy groups, and those proxy groups have effectively taken over for the Free Syrian Army in the fight against Bashar al Assad. Now, who are those proxy groups? All of those proxy groups, every single one of them, are jihadi rebels. They're Sunni jihadists, and they are funded, trained, equipped by the Saudis, the Turks, the Qataris, and again, indirectly the United States too. They came in with money, they came in with weapons, and they have effectively been fighting the Assad regime since then, in addition to ISIS. So the Assad regime is fighting ISIS, but all opposition groups from 2013 are jihadists. And if you want proof of that, just look at some of their videos. Look at some of the combat videos with these so-called rebel groups in them. You'll always hear them shouting Allahu Akbar, which is a typical, that's kind of the call sign for Sunni jihadists. So Assad is fighting ISIS, but all opposition groups for the last 5 years or so have been varying Sunni jihadist groups, including ISIS. Understand that with the backdrop of what Syria is. Just to give you a quick rundown of of Syria's religious demographics. About 60% of the Syrian population is native Sunni Arab. Okay? 15% of Syria is Christian. And another 15% is Alawite, which is a sect of Shia Islam. And it's a sect that does not believe in Sharia law, that allows its adherents to drink socially, and believes in reincarnation, oddly enough. Bashar al-Assad himself is an Alawite. And so is much of the ruling military and most upper crust of Syria. They're mostly Alawite. There are some Christians, and then there are some patrician upper crust Sunnis that have kind of joined to make the ruling coalition that runs Syria right now, or has run Syria since 1970 when Bashar al-Assad's father Hafez took power. These minority religious groups, the Alawites, the Christians, and the Yazidis as well, what do you think has happened to them in these rebel-held or ISIS-held areas. You can imagine. They've been run out, they've been murdered, they've been exterminated, and their women have been sold into sex slavery. That is not an exaggeration. That is literally what has happened. If Assad loses on a large scale, then all of these non-Sunni religious minority groups are going to be exterminated. That is a fact. Thankfully, over the last few years, the war has turned in favor of Assad thanks to Russian intervention, thanks to Hezbollah, Liwa al-Quds, which is a Palestinian refugee group, and Iran. They have also intervened on Assad's behalf and turned the war around with air support, ground support, training, supplies, various things. As a result of this, most of the populated territory of Syria is now government-held, and thankfully, once again, Bashar al-Assad has been able to put a stop to the sex slavery, the forced conversions, and the religious pogroms. And that's a good thing. I've been hearing a lot of conservatives and a lot of Trump supporters repeating media buzzwords about Syria and Assad as if they really haven't thought about it at all and they don't really understand anything other than what the media is telling them. Bashar al-Assad gassed his own people, blah, 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 he's a brutal dictator, etc., etc. Trump supporters should know better than to just regurgitate the media narrative. After all that you've been through, after all that we've been through, and I've been a Trump supporter from the beginning, we've all been through the media and their blatant lies, their gaslighting, their Tokyo Rose tactics to demoralize. Nothing that they've said has been true about Trump. Everything that they've said about Trump has had a negative agenda. And I thought that the conservatives and people on the American right had effectively broken the media conditioning when they all broke and went for Trump regardless of what the media said. I thought that we were done listening to the media. But it seems like a lot of us have just fallen right back under their spell. As for the allegations of gas attacks from Assad and whatnot, I'm very skeptical about them. I'll just come out and say I don't believe them. The media and the intelligence agencies back in 2003, I'm not sure if some of you are old enough to remember that, but back in 2003 in the lead up to the Iraq War, they lied to us about that. And to me, this looks like the exact same playbook. So it's time for you to get skeptical on this stuff. As far as Syria goes and as far as the Middle East goes, I think a lot of us really still just don't understand, and we should understand by now. We've been in 2 wars over there. Just don't understand how the Middle East works. The best you can expect, there's not going to be a liberal democracy in the Middle East. It's been tried. We've tried it in Iraq. We've tried it in Egypt and I think Libya for a while. It just doesn't work, okay? The best you can expect from the Middle East, the best you can expect from the Islamic world, is to have a regime that respects civil law as opposed to Sharia, to have a regime that protects religious minorities, because there are a lot of Christians all throughout the Middle East, not just in Syria. And it's to have a regime that doesn't enforce this ultra-Orthodox Islamic way of life where women are forced to wear burqas and whatnot. That is what Bashar al-Assad offers. He is the best we're going to get in the Middle East. Okay? There has never been Sharia law in Syria. Women do not have to wear burqas. They can go to college. They can get educated. And up until very recently, religious minorities in Syria, such as Alawites, Yazidis, and of course Christians, have been protected. Now, Syria is 15% Christian. There are, I think, about 2 million Christians in Syria. If Assad loses, Bashar al-Assad and his father Hafez in the past were literally the only thing standing between the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda and the Christians of Syria. I'd like for it to stay that way, and so should you. Thanks.